Oh, you can't hear me. All right. I don't know why it's showing up private. Hopefully you can see me. Um, yeah. All right. Let's just go right into it. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being patient. I was setting it up and maybe it always said private and I never noticed that. Hear me. All right. Okay. So let's get into it. So last night I did I'll say last video prior to this one where I talked about inspiration. You're not really looking for inspiration. People are getting upset because they're not getting inspiration when in fact they were looking for aspiration. Go check out that video. It was like a little rant that I went on, but it was a fun little rant. All right. So today we're going to get into why God may not be responding to your situation or blessing your situation. And so when you see the thumbnail, it will be advancing skills over accepting handouts. And you know that I have my notes here. And so what does that mean? Advancing skills over accepting handouts. So I have this disclaimer here that I want to say. When I'm talking about giving handouts, let's think about this in the context of the lesson. So I'm not above anybody getting help or support or anything like that. We all need someone to give us a lending hand at times, and not even a lending hand, just I may not be able to pay you back kind of hand. So that's not what I'm talking about, because there are situations where we need people to help us in every area of our lives, and we are called to help other people when they are in need without expecting things in return as well. So when I'm talking about handouts, I'm not talking about that in that kind of way. So stay with me. I want to put that disclaimer out there. The handouts that I'm talking about is if you are in a situation where you feel like you're entitled to somebody doing something for you. Just because you showed up, you woke up, you breathe air, you think somebody owes you something. That is a form of entitlement. So you may think that you want a particular blessing or for somebody to do something for you, but your attitude is one of entitlement. So that is what I'm referring to. And I'm talking about this because I've been that way at times where I'll get into it, but I'm talking from personal experience, and I'm talking from lived experiences or interacting with other people. So I have the story that I want to share with you in a way. Let me make sure. Okay. So there's a situation, and we're going to get to why we're focusing on advancing skills over accepting handouts and why God may not be blessing your situation. So I was in a situation, I prayed for this thing for years, like for it to happen. I got real serious and real intentional about what I wanted and how I wanted. And when I say intentional, I mean, like, just giving scriptures back, because God responds to scriptures. Angels respond to scriptures, in case no one ever told you that. So I was like, okay, I'm really focused. That's what I'm doing. And that's how I'm going to go to God for this particular situation. And it took a couple years for the answer to really come. But God blessed me with a partial answer. And so when I got it, I was like, okay, this wasn't fully what I expected, but I mean, I'm saying this like looking hindsight, because this is exactly what he said. But in the moment, I wasn't. It didn't look like that God was responding in the way that I prayed for. But now I'm looking at, you have to look at things in isolation. A couple of trainings ago or videos ago, we talked about, are you the one that's despising small beginnings? And I kind of talked about that situation there. So in this case, I was despising small beginnings because it didn't look like the end result. So I was like, okay, God, I prayed for this. And he was like, okay, I opened the door. Now it's up to you to do the other part. And he put me in a situation to where I would have been able to do the second part of the blessing to get it the way I wanted to go. But instead of me using the strategy, and I got this from Bishop Wayne Malcolm, when you pray to God for things, he gives you thoughts, ideas, and strategies for you to implement so you can get the thing. So he put me in a situation to where there was no way I was able to do this particular thing with my current career. So got into really business and entrepreneurship to see the possibilities. And I was like, okay, great. That's exactly what I need to do. But me not standing firm or holding on to God's word, I allowed that to go out of the window. So I ignored a couple of things that God was telling me to do strategy wise or up leveling my skill set, in certain areas. And so when a couple of years went by and I'm like, okay, God, where's the other part of the blessing? Like I gave you back your word. You said, that this is how we should approach you about certain situations. And I'm like crying, I'm praying, I'm fasting, and God was not budging. And I would get upset with God. I was like, this doesn't work. And I'm turning to, and this is how it's so easy. Like if you turn to other alternatives and you think you're not turning your back on God, but you kind of are when you're not believing him and doing and being obedient based on what he said. So as I'm looking back and the situation, wasn't fixed. And now like I've worked on like my mindset and different things and really being intentional about God. Like, what are you really seeing for this new direction in my life? And I can, what I need to do to finish the second part of the blessing, it is not hard. People are doing this left and right, with, with ease. And I'm like, why is it a struggle for me? And it was a struggle because I wasn't obedient the first time. So what does my story have to do with this? So while God said, this is what I need you to do, this is direction I want you to go in, I've aligned you with some people so you can work on this particular skill set. Me not being strong enough in my core and was really having faith enough and going in the direction he told me to, I allowed, those coaches to change my mind or send me off into another direction. No fault to the coaches because God told me, not them. And so he was like, I told you this is what you were supposed to do. And I was like, no, but it can't be that way. I and it was a faith part. I was like, I don't looking back, I don't think you can bless me in that way, even though you said it, even though I asked you for it, even though you said your word does not come back void. I'm like, yeah, but in this way, clearly this is not right. And he showed me examples of people doing it for exactly what I needed. And I'm still like, yeah, but not me. So I had to go work through a lot of mindset work, mind shifting work, up level my belief, faith, and expectations for me now to say, oh, this is but a light thing for God to do. And he's gifted me in an area that is only a light thing for me to do through Jesus Christ, being just real honest. But instead of like having that perspective, I'm like, well, God, I'm praying for it and I law of attraction and it should come to me. I'm going to manifest it. And this is how we get caught up in that personal development, business development world because God is telling you to work on your skill, your tags. Remember, I told you I got that from a coach. Your talents, abilities, gifts, and skill set. God is saying, "This is why I created you. Go do that thing I told you to do to get what you've been asking me for." Well, no, God, clearly that's not what you meant because I'm going to sit here, I'm going to manifest, I'm going to script it out, I am going to see it, I'm going to claim it in my mind, I'm going to visualize it and things like that. Now, I do talk about visualization and part of, even faith, you do need to have, being a Christian, you can visualize it in a way, but it's how you use certain techniques. And I'll get back on that series as well. So I'm doing all the things except for what God is telling me to do. And God was not going to bless the situation. So you may be in a situation and you're praying out, crying out. You can do all the fasting, crying, prostrate, deliverance, all of that. But God is not going to change his mind. None of that changes God's mind, especially when he told you what to do and you're capable of doing it. So me being entitled, I was like, well, God, I've been rocking with you for a long time. I know I kind of maybe drifted off a little bit, but me, God, you've put me through a lot. I think you kind of owe me. I'm just being honest. And how many of you can be like that? You've gone through situations in your life and you think God owes you something. So that's that entitled mentality or that perspective of an entitled blessing, asking God for a handout or trying to accept a handout. So all of that, so you'll understand why I said that disclaimer at the end. So don't go around rejecting help. And I did that, which caused it a situation to to be worse. And that was a lack mentality where, anyway, maybe I'll share that one day, but just being able to look back on certain things, you're like, man, miracles are always around. God's blessings are always around. But what happens is we're blinded to it. We don't see it. And because of whatever's going on inside of us, we reject miracles and blessings all the time. And then we were like, well, where was the same God that was in the Bible? He's still here. But just like Jesus had to go, he was like, I can't do anything because your lack of unbelief. All right. So, what does all of that have to do with what I shared with you? I wanted to let you know, like, I truly do understand what I'm about to share with you today. So, the whole lesson kind of, I've been talking about skills. I've done this challenge. Well, I did one, I'm going to do it again prayerfully at the end of this month, the Leverage and Lead Your Expertise and Experience Challenge. If you want to be familiar with that, go watch the series. I'm going to bundle that up some kind of way, but go watch as of now. It should still be on there. The Wisdom and Wealth series, and you can understand the direction that I'm talking about, especially with skill sets. And this is why it is important for you to know your skill set, advance them, learn new ones, and things like that, because that is your key to getting um, to having access to what God has already blessed us with. He is not coming down I talked about the floodgates. He's not going to just pour it down in a way like some of our favorite gospel songs have said, like open the floodgates of heaven, pour down the blessing on me. It's not going to come literally like that. He's put us in, God has given us things for us to do, to connect with people, work with people, do things for it to happen. Now, that doesn't mean you work hard, like I'm just going to grind it out. Not in that way where you're efforting, to do it. But when you're operating in his grace and ease on the path he told you, work can be challenging at times, but it won't be hard, grinding to the bones, all of that when you're operating how you're supposed to be. All right, so this is what I want to share with you about the reasons why it's time for you to really advance your skills or learn how to leverage your skills in a way so that you can access the blessings God wants you to access. Like he's already designed a life for you and already created. So you can say, I create my own life. No, you don't. You're just getting in alignment to what was already created, or you can reject it. I mean, you can create your own life in a way if you just reject what God has said and you want to take a different path, but it's not going to be as graceful or with ease as it could be if you get back on track. So God has already told you that when we ask God for certain things, whether it's material things, house, car, business growth, a relationship, or even in health or whatever it is, God doesn't give you he's not going to just touch you and say, whoop, there it is. He's going to give you an idea, a strategy, or a thought, or he's going to put somebody in your path. And that way that you get ready to take action. He's going to, the true inspiration I talked about in the previous video, true inspiration. He's going to put something to mentally stimulate you to want to generate a creative idea and to take action to do that thing. That is what God is going to do. And then we have to have the faith and say, okay, I'm going to go on this path and I'm already believing in the result that I've asked you for. And I'm just doing this out of obedience, pretty much. So here are some examples. Before I get into why it's like some of the people that leveraged their skills and one person who did not, to give you the example in the Bible so that you can see why it's important for you to do the same thing. The first scripture, well, it's really one scripture I want to read, and that goes to sometimes why we are entitled. Let me go. Where is it? Okay. So it's coming from Mark chapter 4, verse 20. And you probably heard the story, the parable of the sower and the soils. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read one scripture, one part of it, so that you can get kind of what I'm talking about. But you can go read Mark chapter 4, verses 1 through 20. But the last one, verse 20 says, and those in the last group are the ones on whom seeds were sown on good soil, and they heard the word of God, the good news regarding the way of salvation, and accepted and bear fruit 30, 60, and 100 times as much as was sown. So I wanted to jump to that part because that's where a lot of us tend to jump. We tend to jump to the part that's the entitlement part of, oh, God bless me with 100-fold. Oh, God's going to bless you 100-fold. But if you read the entire parables, there are some prerequisites before you get that. And then it's not always 100-fold. Sometimes it's 30-fold because that's all you need at that moment. Sometimes it's 60-fold because that's all you need in that moment. And then sometimes it is 100-fold because that's what you need in that moment. But the entitlement part of wanting to accept handouts is thinking that God is going to automatically, because maybe you just did this one thing and he's automatically going to do the 100-fold. That's not the case. So there were this was not part of what I was going to talk about, but I'm going to say it anyway so you understand. There were two types of good soils, and people often forget about that in that story. There are people who actually hear and they're open and they're like, okay, this is good, instead of the ones that are rejecting it and all of that. But the second part, that's why he said the last group, they're the ones who take it and, cultivate it, take action, and, I'm paraphrasing, but believe and do what they're supposed to do to get that 30, 60, 100-fold versus the people who sat there, listened, agreed with it, but did not take action. All right. So those were the people who were aspirational. Go watch the previous video to understand that. But the people in the last group, they were intentionally inspired to do what they needed to do. And God blessed them with the 30, 60, 100-fold. So we have a responsibility. Again, God is not going to just hand us out and just bless the situation just because we said, God, do it. Can he? Absolutely. No doubt about it. And there are cases where God will just do it. However, is one, he does it because he's a good father, but also there are times where you've probably been doing things because that's the way universal law works. You've been doing things in your life and it's kind of like building up that account. And then when you do get a certain miracle like that, because it's not of your own doing, it's, let me know if that makes sense. So it's not like you're working for a blessing. You're not working like that, like, God, I was good, now bless me. He doesn't operate like that. But there are things that we're supposed to be doing in life. And, just like a parent, you don't always reward your child just because they did the one thing. Some things they're just supposed to do. And they don't always get rewarded for the things they're supposed to do. But there are times when they are consistently doing what they're supposed to do. You as the parent, you're like, what, let me reward my child. And they're not even expecting it, right? And then there are times when the child is expecting something. They come to you and ask you for something. And you say, well, in order for me to do this, I need you to do that. And then they go do it. And then you respond. So just kind of keep that in your perspective. If somebody's on here, a Bible scholar, and you have a different way of explaining it, you let me know. All right. So the lessons, who leverage. So I want you to think about that good soil and know that there are two types of people. Just because you accept it and you can listen and say, oh, that was great, I was moved. If you're not inspired to take action, then that you don't get the 30, 60, 100-fold. That's not you. The people who are advancing their skills. So there are certain people in the Bible. Let me give you this definition that I found for biblical leverage. And this is why it's important to learn how to leverage your expertise and your experiences or your skill set for the greater good. All right. So this was from wisdomhunters.com. It says leverage in man's economy is debt owed to an individual or an institution with specific results required. Leverage in God's economy is an obligation of faith and obedience to God's call with nothing but an eternal upside. Weak faith followers of Jesus give into our culture's cry for immediate results and thus sacrifice waiting on God and give up the 100-time return. It's a lot to unpack in there. I'm not going to talk about, debt and all of that. Look, different situations. So I'm not here to talk about, debt being good, bad, don't do. That's not what I'm talking about. But there is a part where if you are getting into debt because you're not waiting on God to respond, that's a problem. However you want to put it, that's a problem. So we'll leave that debt conversation there. But the part where he's talking about you have to be obedient and trust that God is going to do it and wait on God. Some of us settle for a trickle of a blessing. So it's not that 30 times return is a bad thing. That's not at all. It's only bad when God was ready to give you the 60 or 100, but because you jumped ship, or because you were impatient, or because you were doing your own thing, trying to hurry up, or maybe you weren't as obedient as you should have been, then you forfeit the 60 and 100 that God has given you. I have seen that in my own life looking back. And I'm like, God, I was kind of better off if you never showed me what could have been, right? But if you didn't, then I wouldn't learn. And the situation I talked about in the beginning of this video, where had I been obedient, I could have gotten that 100 return right off rip. I already see it, and God has shown me multiple times. And after I got up, crying and being angry and feeling bad and all of those feelings, I'm like, okay, I had to go through that. Now I know for sure, without any doubt, that it is possible. So I'm trying to save you from being in fetal position over certain situations, and trust the fact, if God is telling you to do something, even if it feels out of the norm, out of your zone of comfort, uh if it's something like off, but it, was God telling you, go ahead and do it, because we cannot do anything to deserve his what he's going to do. We can't outwork him or anything like that. He just wants to know that we are going to have that biblical leverage and operate in faith and obedience. So who has done that? Who has done that in the Bible, so that you'll know that I'm not just making things up? Why are people just like calling me? Like, clearly. And I only have my phone here so I can check that it's streaming. Otherwise, I wouldn't be looking down. All right. So, what advancing skills? And you're like, okay, what is the point? Let's wrap this up. Let's put, a bow on this. Who in the Bible did this, and why is it important for us to do skills, and why are we should not go around being entitled for handouts and accepting just handouts, or asking God to just open up the heaven and pour it down on me, like, you do it, God, fix it, Jesus, take the wheel. Jesus be like, no, stop giving me the wheel. And I've done that. Jesus, take the wheel, and he's like, absolutely not. Because I trained you how to drive. Now go drive this car. I'm still here, but I need you to drive. So we gotta take some responsibility. All right. So the first example was Paul, and you can go read about this in Acts chapter 18, verses 1 through 4. And I'm reading the Bible in the year, so a lot of these, you know, topics are inspired by that. And so Paul made tents. And yes, he was like super Christian. He wrote what, 2/3 of the New Testament. And there are a lot of times, if you go read a lot of the scriptures in the New Testament, Paul, when he goes to do his mission work, he does not accept offering or money or anything from the people. Now, he doesn't do that all the time, but a lot of times he does that. So he's like, I don't want to burden you. And how was Paul able to fund what he really wanted to do? Because he was a tent maker, and he was also a lawyer by trade. I think so, a Pharisee or something like that. So he was skilled and educated, right? There were times I talked about in the previous video where he had to learn how to leverage his expertise and his experiences when he was going to court. So it was customary for Paul, being a rabbi, to have a trade. A lot of us, all of us, have something that we are gifted with, that we're talented at doing, and there are things that we learned how to do. Even, there are just things you were born with, things that you still need to cultivate and develop, but it's effortless to you. And there are things that you've actually learned to do, and you've worked at those things. Pick one, and make a decision and go all in on that. So Paul did that, and he was able to fund his additional ministries. It was also custom in the Jewish culture for the rabbis to have a trade. His father was a carpenter, and who else was a great carpenter? I'll let you put that comment down below, because all of this should start making sense. If that person had a trade, or they had a skill, why don't you think that we're supposed to be doing something, right? All of the disciples, they all had a skill that they had advanced. So I'm saying this to say, a lot of times we have these big dreams, we have these big goals, and we're praying to God, oh God, bless me in a way. I wish I could, feed 1 million people, or build houses for women who've been in domestic situations, or take my family, off to this exotic vacation, whatever it is. And God is like, great, I love that for you. Now go do this thing here. It could be do this speaking engagement, or write this book, or get on and do the videos, or go serve this client, go coach, go do something. You have something in your hand for you to do to fund the very thing that you're asking God to bless you with. Paul, God, Jesus told Paul to go preach the gospel. Paul was like, okay, great. I know this is going to cost some money. Let me go make some tents real quick. And so I can fund that. So when I show up, people can hear what I'm saying and not saying, oh gosh, he just coming to talk to me because he wants something. He went there free. And that is such a powerful place to be when you can show up. I mean, I don't know. I think it served me well to a certain point. But pretty much every career that I've been in, and I was able to operate to a like operate as from a position of I don't necessarily need to be here, right? And that's an empowering place, not like an arrogant place, or, oh, forget that job and things like that. It's not that. But when you come from, I am going to be okay with or without this job, you show up differently, right? And I believe that's what Paul did when he went to go minister to the people. He was able to show up like, I don't need anything from you, so I get to give full out, and you can relax your guard and know that I'm not here just to take something from you. Another example was who do I have here? Isaac, and you can go read about. I think it's Esau. I heard it pronounced that way, and now it's stuck in my head. So I think it's Esau. All these years, right? Let me know if it's. Do you say Isaac or Esau? So in Genesis 25 through 24, we know Abraham, Esau, and Jacob. The trifold fathers of the Jewish people, and he planted, his skill set was planting, and he inherited Abraham's business, his daddy's business, right? He inherited Abraham, and I'll talk about Abraham too. But he inherited that business and he became very wealthy. And then he also used that leverage to go and build Jacob's well, and that birthed an entire nation. So he was able to use his skill set, advance his skill set, and then leverage it to do even more. So if we have these examples in the Bible, why don't you think that we're not supposed to do certain things? Maybe if you're still on your job, that is, don't go and say I hate this job, or I can't wait to leave, or things like that. That's not the right attitude. Use that job for stability and for peace of mind as you are working to do something else. Don't get comfortable, but don't dismiss your blessing either, because being out here in entrepreneur land, if you're not set up with the right mindset and the focus, you're it, you're just not going to do well. Okay, so learn how to leverage what you have. Like I said, Esau, he learned how to be a shepherd. Learn how to garden. Then, of course, taking over the family business, he had to have a skill set to learn how to do that, because he probably like, okay, I grew up around these sheep, but I don't know how to do the business of being of sheep herding or whatever they did, cattle herding. So he had to learn that, and then people got jealous of him. He had to go on about his business, and then he was like, well, learning kind of the principles and concepts from planting, gardening, and shepherding. How can I use this to build a well and make it profitable for my people? That's what he did. That is leveraging, and also being a service to others. You can also read it now. Abraham's leverage, how what he did in Genesis 12 and 14, he used this, just being the businessman that he was, being the boss man that he was. He went to go save his nephew Lot against, I think, what, 5 kings? That's how much money dude had. So think about yourself. This is another reason why we need to be our own ecosystem and build our own economy within our wheelhouse, being the hub of that, is because there are different things, different ventures. The Bible in Ecclesiastes talk about having 7 to 8 streams of income, because you may be in a situation where you have to go literally rescue somebody, maybe out of a foreclosure home, maybe from a car repossession, maybe from a hospital bill, wouldn't it be great if a family member or a very close friend or just somebody in need needed something, and you could do more than just do a little $5, $10 donation here? You could literally go and help that person and literally save that person. That's the power of advancing your skills versus just waiting on a handout or waiting for God to just bless you. He has already blessed us, but we also have to give him something to work with. Abraham was doing his thing and with the sheep and stuff, and he had gold and silver, all the things that he was doing, not knowing that at one point he was going to have to go up against 5 nations to go get his nephew. So don't always think of just I'm doing this just so I can have a pile of money or just so I can buy myself, certain things that I want. You're building because at some point you could be the one to have to leverage your wealth to go save somebody else. Let me know if you're tracking with me, if that's landing for you. All right. And then so we talked about people who have leveraged their skill set, advanced their skills, and we've seen the results of those, the 100-fold, 30, 60, or 100-fold results from that. Now I'm going to talk about somebody very quickly who did not do that, and they were waiting for the handout, and why we should not just wait for the handout. A lot of us know the story of Jacob and Esau. Esau was the oldest brother. He already had the birthright. His skill was hunting, and he was a very good hunter. But when you do something like that, it's a lot of physical labor. So he never leveraged his hunting skills. He was always the point runner doing that. And he did it so much, he was at the point of exhaustion. So you could be operating in a place where you are doing all the things to the point of exhaustion, and you are at the mercy of the person who has the upper hand. So he was hungry, he was tired, and instead of him being able to collect himself or have another way out, he ended up selling his birthright to his brother for a bowl of soup, because in the moment he was impatient, and instead of him having all the blessing of his father, because at this point Isaac had about 3, 4 businesses, instead of him having that, he gave that all up just for a right now, in the moment, instant gratification. He did not want to wait. He did not leverage his skills. He did not advance any skills. He didn't leverage any skills. He accepted a handout, and look what happened to him. There's a lot of things you can talk about that story, but I just want to point that part out. How many of us have worked ourselves to exhaustion? It could be mentally in any situation. Worrying is something like that. And you've deprived yourself of the freedom, the joy of knowing, one, God's got it. And but you God has it. He's going to work it out, but he's not going to work it out if you keep worrying and, doubting and things like that. And what is that costing you doing that? Whereas, let's see, what could Esau have done? Possibly rested, right? I'm pretty sure it was a whole bunch of kids and stuff running around, out there. Maybe he could have asked one of the kids to go get him something to eat. Maybe he could have built up a team to go hunt so he could just supervise and not be the one out there hunting. He could have done all of that so he didn't work himself to the bone, to where now he's like, oh my gosh, it's at the end of the day. I don't have any strength left. I will give you whatever you want. And that is never a good place to be, to where you are at the mercy of somebody because they have what you want, and they have what you want or need, but you don't have anything to negotiate with. You don't have any negotiation power, and you're willing to just give your everything for just like little crumbles. And I think that's what a lot of us do, because we are willing to accept the handout instead of being obedient and have faith in God and go and advance the skills, because the skills stay with us for a lifetime. The handouts, once we use it, is over and done with. So that's the great part about learning how to leverage what you have. So, in conclusion, I want to talk about, when you're coming off into entrepreneurship or being a business owner with these business ventures, start shifting your perspective about leveraging what you already have. when I in the challenge, I'm going to do it again. I talked about not always focusing on what your passion is and what you're good at. I wish I would have really realized that you need to do in the moment. And some people may disagree with this advice, but I am seeing this, and I've had some other high level coaches say the same thing. Some really successful people say this. And when I say successful, I mean like business wise, money wise, family wise, like it all works. They have their ecosystem going, like things that I'm looking towards. Like, okay, so you didn't sacrifice everything, but you have an ecosystem, a hub, and you're saying the same thing. Okay, great. It's not always about, oh, let me do the thing that I love. It is about what skills can I use that's something that's already thriving and going in that direction so I can generate the income that I need to generate. Want to make sure that I am safe and good and secure. Just saying, because you can't operate and help anybody else if you are not safe and secure. And that doesn't mean that you balling out of control. Not like that. But it's like, okay, I am above water. I am good. I can float, right? I'm not up here, clawing at the surface, right? And then so you're good, but then now you have additional income or revenue, and then now you can go do your passion project, right? Instead of scraping, scrimping, and asking God, hoping to prayer, bless this struggling project. And he's like, I do want you to do that, but I also need you to do this because your skill set that you've kind of pushed to the side, hundreds, thousands, probably millions of people need that thing. But because you're just working on this and you're asking me to bless this, I'm telling you to go do that for somebody else first. So that when it's time for you to do this passion project, it'll be with grace and ease, right? Learning how to leverage. I did not get that when I started this. I was like, I went oh, just not right. Right. There were things that I could have done, especially in the course creation when that all started, when people are writing their certification programs and things like that. That is I have all these degrees, that skill set is there, but I was so focused like, oh, well, that's just something we did on the job or in this industry. Clearly, it doesn't transfer over there. Wrong, 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 right? So I am telling you now, there's something that you've done. Look at your skill set, advance that skill set, and then learn how to leverage it. Because if you're asking God for something, He already gave you the answer to it, and He's not going to bless that situation in the way that you think that He's going to bless it. Floodgates not coming. The heaven, there is an open heaven, but it is not open just to rain down and you don't do what He told you to do. All right, let me know your thoughts about this. Go read Mark chapter 4 to see if you're which soil that you're in, what you're not doing, and see why God may or may not be blessing you. So to wrap this up, I mean, we already wrapped it up. That's the lesson. But if you want support in that, and you're like, okay, I can't see it for myself. People are always saying this, but I really can't see it. For the month of May only, I am doing Brilliant intensive laser coaching sessions, and the information will be down below, where we do work together for a focused time. It's a quick time. It's like 90 minutes, but you do some pre-work before we get to that 90 minutes. And then in that 90 minutes, this is not just casual conversation. This is not what's up for you today. No, this is let's come in, let's find the gaps that you're missing so that you can get the solution that you need and then take action. And then I follow up with you, a few weeks later to make sure that you're still on the right track to take action. Sometimes you don't need a full-on coaching program, a full-on package or a consulting package or a mastermind or anything like that. Those things are great and are needed. But there are times where, you know what, I just need this one thing right here and somebody to sit and map this out for me without any distractions, and someone who's going to call me higher, hold me accountable, and see a bigger vision than I can see for myself. So I'm doing that for the month of May. I opened it up to 15 spots because I was supposed to travel with my grandmother at the end of the month. I don't have to do that now. So I've opened it up. You do have to apply. And you're like, well, why do I have to apply? Because we need to make sure that we are a good fit. If you put something on the application and you're like, and it may not be in my wheelhouse, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And knowing that I can't support you, that is irresponsible. And then so fill out an application, and then you get to ask me questions to see if it's the right fit, because I want you to be have a clear no or a clear yes if I am the one that can support you on your journey, so that we don't waste each other's time, right? And then yeah, and then the follow up, because like I've said in some other videos, is one thing to get a plan and start working. I did this in not personal, professional development a lot when I was a consultant. Go out and do all the things for the people and then leave. And then you come back, a year later. And I was like, well, what happened? Why didn't y'all, do what we told you? We gave you the plan. What was missing? It was the follow up and the support, because it sounds good in the moment. Just like when I was teaching math, kids would sit there. Oh, yeah, I can do all of that. And then when it was time to go do homework and come back, well, why couldn't you do it? That is not what you talked about. It was what I talked about, but it seems easier when you have somebody with you. But the good thing with teaching, they were able to come back the next day and say, okay, I missed something and I want to incorporate that. Versus when I was doing consulting, it was like, all right, we're on to the next school. And we left them for months or maybe a year, or probably never went back. And that was a disservice. And I wanted to make sure I did not do that. So that is for the month of May in honor of Mother's Month. I am doing that. This is not an extended coaching package or partnership. It is laser focused. It's almost like not a pick your brain, because that happens in the pre-work. But once you get the idea, then we go and execute a plan, and then you get to follow up. And then you're like, well, what can we talk about? That's why I want you to do the pre-work. And uh, it's a broad range of things I can support you with, because honestly, it's really up here. I'm pretty sure you have the actual skills that you need to do the thing you want to do, but you may not be able to see it. And I could possibly see that for you. All right. So that's all I have for you today. Let me know your thoughts down below. Be sure to like the video, because it does help. I'm getting up the subscribers and the watch time. So thank you. Make sure you comment, even if you watch it live, come back on the replay and, say something on there, because that also helps, because I can't always see your comments because I'm checking different things at once. And then share it if you find this helpful for someone else, or share it on your other social platforms, so people will know more about what I'm talking about, and you're helping me broadcast, and we're all doing this together. So I appreciate you and thank you so much. And if I did not say it, make sure you subscribe if you like this vibe, so you can get notified when I go live. If this is after May and you're like, oh man, that sounds good, or you went and saw the information page and you're like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to invest right now, or uh you're like, oh, that sounds good, let me come back, and it's gone. There'll be another opportunity for you to connect with me in the description box. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to confuse you, but you'll see the one for the Brilliant Intensive above it. And then if it's after May, well, I mean, you can still see that opportunity there too, but the Brilliant Intensive laser session, how it is currently set up at the price that it is set up, I am never doing that again. All right, so you want to take advantage of that. I think I can. Yeah, I have it open. Oh, here's the thing. I did not say this. You have to book it in May. If for some reason your schedule does not permit, then we can talk about that, because I think some people were like nervous, like, well, I don't know, I don't have time. I want to jump in, even though we still have time in May. I just want to honor that. Say you still have to book it in May, and we can schedule it probably in June if that works for you and works for both of us. So, but it has to be booked in May, because I am shutting that down. All right, I've said bye like 15 times. Thank you so much. Whether you're beginning your day or ending your day, remember to be well, be empowered, be bold, and be brilliant. Until next time.